Good morning. Okay, friends. So, I just said before the recording, but now with the recording, I just kind of want to reiterate. We'll kind of move through, and I want to look at bring the feet work that we've been doing the past 2 weeks. I think that's important. It's our foundation when we're standing, but bring it up and notice how it starts to move up into the sacrum and talk a little bit about the sacrum, which will address that area where you're talking about, right? And how that moves up into the pelvis, and of course, that kind of I don't want to say core. I really don't like thinking of this as the core, but that abdominal area. And we'll talk more about that because I think the core is more complex. So find that nice long spine in whatever position you're in. Talked about last week, we talked about how when the knees are higher than the hips, it's very difficult for the pelvis not to go into what's called a posterior tilt, right? The hips moving back behind you. So try to have your hips at least the height of the knees, preferably a touch higher. And see if that doesn't help you find the very middle of the buttocks bones, which at this point in time is your foundation. So when we work from the foundation, can we start to find that neutral pelvis and then let the spine grow up out of that, the root to rise principle? And because I'm an eager beaver, an overachiever, right? Type A, all the different words you have for it, I have to remind myself not to turn everything on and get aggro with that. So if you're from my school, I'll call it, right? What can you soften? What don't you need? And I want to actually start now that we're kind of in, the position, I'll call it the posture. Um, bring your awareness outside of your body. Keep your eyes closed, but with all of your other senses, including just kind of memory of where you are, sense the room around you. Some of us might have loved ones or other beings in the space with us. We can kind of sense where they are, where their energy field might be. You can think about how much room is behind you, in front of you, to the sides, above. If you're indoor or outdoor, right? Maybe your space continues beyond those walls. Maybe you don't have walls. Maybe there's sounds in the room with you and or coming from far away. And then start to bring that into the body. Let's do that through the breath. Notice the air as it enters the body at the base of the nostrils and also as it exits. Now, as you have your awareness right at the base of the nostrils, there are a couple of things you might be able to feel that will help you sense this, tune into this. Maybe you notice that the air is a little cooler as it enters the body, a little warmer as it exits. And then the other thing that many of us can sense is the feeling of the air brushing, caressing that area just above your upper lip. And then let that awareness with the next inhale travel from the nostrils up to that space between your eyebrows, just slightly above them, right? The third eye center, we call that. And try to maintain that. Try to keep your awareness there for a few moments. Again, right between the eyebrows, a little bit deeper than the skin. Right? Think about being kind of in the skull. And just take a moment. This is, they say, the center of perception. So just take a moment with that perception of where you are in space, where you are emotionally, mentally, physically, etc. Bring your hands together in front of your heart. Take an inhale. With an exhale, just bow your head in for just a moment, your head towards your heart. And I like to do this every once in a while in my own practice, just as a reminder that the two are very connected. Yeah, your head and your heart. And if there's an intention you'd like to set while we're here for the next breath or two, set an intention for your practice. Inhale, lifts the head back up, the chin. Exhale your hands to your thighs and inhale, open your eyes. And then something, it's funny from what you said earlier, something I wanted to bring in today anyway, and that I made a little video about and talked about is perception, right? This is something I work with personally as well. And how we perceive things really makes a difference in our body. So just briefly, right? If I imagine, I think a really easy one is, if I'm going to get on a plane and the whole time I'm on that plane, I imagine the plane going down, right, and crashing. My body is reacting that entire time as if it's happening. That's how strong your perception is, right? It goes into the brain, you imagine it, it goes to your pituitary gland about right there in the middle of the head, and the pituitary gland starts to tell all the other glands what to do in order to protect you, to save your life, to survive, etc. So stress response, right? So two things about that. One, as you move throughout class today, can you not have all these preconceived perceptions? Oh, my body this and my hip is this and my whatever. Try your best. I fall into the same patterns. I know my patterns well, and they're the patterns that are in my body, right? But as if you're in a brand new body you've never ever noticed before, try to just not have preconceived perceptions and just notice what you notice as you move through the body today, right? Brand new year. And then also, if you notice yourself probably in the class, not so much, but as you move out throughout your day, and I'll try to remind us at the end of class, if you notice that there's like a stress or suddenly it's like, I'm not doing it right, or like we have these perceptions, these things that pop up, can you reframe it? Can you let it go so that you don't go into the chemical cascade that happens in the body when suddenly you're not perfect and you're not right, or your survival's at risk for the various things, right? Okay, so that said, go ahead and bring your arms out to the side and start our teeter-totter. So we've been doing this one for a while. Find your own rhythm, right? You can work on the breath. You do not have to. What I notice is my opposite buttocks wants to lift every time, which is fine, but now I'm going to sink it down so I can get a little deeper into the stretch of my side body. You can do whatever you'd like in yours. And then if you want to add that neck work where you turn and look down when you move to one side, then you turn and look up before you push off to go to the other side. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, we've been doing this for a bit. So adding a little neck work in. And last piece would be that upper arm coming over. So it's everything I've done so far. And I just simply add that upper arm in. So I'm looking down, then I turn, look past the bicep and push over to the other side. So we get side body work. We get a little bit of neck work. We start to wake up our upper body. Our lymphatic system starts to move. So many great things, right? The next time you're over to the right, how about we meet over there? There's no rush to get there. We're going to do that rib rolling. Turn and look down and roll your ribs down. Your arm can come down as well. You can swing it down if you want to, the top arm. And then you're going to turn and look up and bring that arm into cactus if it's okay with your shoulder, right? So I turn my ribs down, my top ribs, my left ribs. I can do whatever I want with that top arm. Awesome sauce. And when I come up, I roll open, look up, and I come into cactus arm. One more time, roll down. Keep that left hip heavy, friends. And coming on up, pause. Can your elbow move back just a little further, right, without being forceful or jerky to the body? And then come all the way up, pause for just a moment, and just notice this side of the body compared to this side, right? Probably a little different. Bring the left arm down, right arm can come over, and turn and look down, right? And then we're going to do the rib rotation. So go ahead and rotate your right ribs down. Maybe that right arm comes down. It doesn't have to, any amount, whatever feels good. And when you roll open, you're going to turn and look up and go into cactus arm with your right arm and rotating down. Try to keep that right hip heavy if it's lifting, if that feels right for you and beneficial. Who am I to say that, you can't let it move with you? I like it because it gets me into that side body a little bit more. Next time, stay there. You're looking up without being forceful, right? Keep the kidneys large. Reach that elbow back just a little bit. And push off, come on up, bring the hands down and pause. How's that brand new body of yours, right? And then we're going to move into a twisting action. So we're going to start by bringing the arms into cactus or goalpost arms. Hello, Miss Sarah. Go ahead and turn to the right. It's not a big move, right? Inhale, center, and you'll exhale to the left. That's the move. So go ahead and just keep going at your own pace. You can turn the head into the twist. You can turn it against the twist. What does your neck need today? We're going to stay with this next one. When we get here, come into the more traditional left hand outside the right leg, right fingertips on ground, on floor, on block, on butt, whatever, hip, right? Lengthen the spine and then use the arms just gently to move a little deeper into the twist. Now I collapse my kidneys every time, 23 years in. So I'm going to inhale and expand my kidneys. Right? What is your thing? Oh, it's a new body. I don't know that it does that. But I did notice that it did it. Come back to center. Same wish wash we just came from, but I'm going to add in another element. You could just stay with your cactus arm. Go ahead and start moving on your breath. You could reach the arms out. I'm going to turn my palms up. It keeps my shoulders, my upper traps a little more out of it. When I extend my arms become heavier. They are more weight. That's just physics, right? So I'm working a little harder with my arms in full extension. What's right for your body today, the one you brought here today. And here we go. When you get to the left, come into the more traditional twist or pausing, right? So now we're static and get nice and tall. Go ahead and move into that by using the arms gently. Check into your body and notice what you notice and without preconceived notions. See, it's hard for me too, by the way. It's really hard practice for me to come at this as if it's a brand new body. And release that body forward. Come off of your setup. Have your block on standby. Come onto your back. By standby just means somewhere mid-mat so you can reach it easily. Ooh, ow. Something just poked me. A piece of wood. Use the ball mounds of the big toes as you come down. That's the past 2 weeks work, right? What happens if my feet participate? Bring those knees in. And when you bring the knees in, you can have your hands, of course, behind your thigh or on your shin. That part doesn't matter. But I want you to notice that your pelvis went into a posterior tilt. If that's like, huh? I could say it just went into cat. Huh? It's rounding down towards the ground. Your low back has now flattened down into the earth. Yeah? Everyone feeling that? And if it's not happening extremely for you, it's probably just a hint of it happening anyway. So now you're going to go ahead and you're going to bring your arms down. I'm going to tee mine out. Palms can be up or down. And this time for core work, right? I don't want you to use your arms. Usually I have you use your arms and the legs receive. Today I want the legs to work. Move your legs over to the right a little bit. Don't go too far with this yet. Move the knees forward away from you, right? And then they move over towards the left. They're still forward and away. You're drawing a big circle is what I'm saying. Left knees towards the left shoulder, past the chest, and keep going this direction. So I'm circling my knees. That can be big or small. You get to choose, but notice why you're choosing what you're choosing. Like, I need core work. I need to be stronger. So I'm going to take the biggest circle I ever could. Or like, I really don't want to work today. So maybe I'll circle, right? So check into those things and just do the one that feels really good in your body. Notice that when your knees move forward, you go into a little bit of an arch in the spine, more towards that cow, or what's called an anterior tilt in the pelvis. And yeah, we are going to talk about the posterior and anterior thing today and get that language into our bodies. Yeah. Go ahead and go the other direction with your circle. Go slow. And if you move slow, right, when you have those knees further away from you, you're going to feel how the core has to kick in, the abdominal specifically, right, in order to help that happen. Of course, if it's feeling like it's too sensitive, your knees further forward away from you, don't have them go so far forward. Let's do about one more circle or so. And then the next time your knees are to center, we're going to go into our twist, right? Let the knees go over to the right. If it's okay to have the knees hug a little closer towards the right arm, I'll say, do, but if you need them further away and that's better for your body, please do that. Yeah. Turn your head to the left. Let that left shoulder soften down. Imagine my hand in the crease of your left hip, and I would put one hand on your left shoulder. I'd hold the left shoulder in place as I gently move your left hip forward towards the right front corner of your mat. So do that for yourself. Lengthen through that side body, and hopefully, Kristen, you're feeling above that area you were talking about, right? But it's all kind of connected. So hopefully, and this is such great sacrum low back work. Now, while you're here, stay here. See if you can move your body into a little bit more of an anterior tilt of the pelvis, AKA cow, AKA I try to move my back into a little bit more of a curve. Don't go extreme with that if you have a sensitive low back, please. Now turn on your low belly, your corset, turn on your side waist, and bring those legs back to center. Pause and center for just a moment. Let the low back round if it would like to. It gets to right now for this moment in time. And then let your knees move over to the left, right? Try to get that left pinky toe down, support the legs with blocks or blankets, or have the knees further away. Take what's best for you. I'm not in your body. I cannot tell you that, right? That right shoulder softens down. And don't punish your body. Be kind. Maybe you imagine a hand on your right shoulder, another hand on your right hip, and me moving that hip, right, that crease of the hip forward to the front left corner of your mat. So I'm asking you to lengthen out of your right side, low sacrum and back. Something like that. Now see if you can invite your pelvis into more of an anterior tilt, frontal hip points moving towards the knees. Your low back gets a little extra curve in it, right? I could say it a few different ways. Language speaks to different people. Yeah, the one that works for you is just great. That low belly, the side waist brings the knees back up to center. Bring your arms up, hug your knees in, go into a posterior tilt. Low back flattens towards the earth. Left foot comes down to the earth, right? You're going to grab the back of the right leg, interlace behind the right thigh. Let me say that better, please. Push that right heel. I don't even know what that other direction meant. Go ahead and see if you can push that right heel up to the ceiling and notice your pelvis and your low back. So it's going to be pretty intricate with that today if you couldn't tell, right? So we don't want to be overarched. We don't want our low floating ribs jamming up to the sky. We want them grounded. We want a little curve, right? We also don't want our low back to be flattened down into the earth. What is your tendency here? Can you, because both bodies go both directions with that one. Yeah. So find your neutral spine, neutral pelvis. Leg does not have to be straight, by the way. Now push your right thigh forward into your into your hands and see if you can't lengthen that right low body a little more. Low body of the torso is what I mean by that. And bring that right foot down. Bring the left knee in, interlace behind the left thigh, push the heel up to the sky. And once you get there, right, the first thing to notice is what your tendency is here. And it could be different on this side than the other, by the way. Are you moving more into anterior tilt, where your low back comes way off the floor and your low floating ribs might come up too? Or are you flattening your back down to the earth? Can you find the happy medium between the two? And one of the ways we can help find that, by the way, is pushing the left thigh forward into the hands. Hands just gently pull back, right? And hopefully that left low body of the low body of the left side of the torso lengthens, stabilizes. Bring that foot down. Now put your hands on your thighs with the heel of the hand right at your hip crease. So I'm pretty high up on my thigh where I'm standing, if that makes sense. I'm doing it if you don't know what I'm talking about. And then we're going to push our thighs forward with the heel of our hands. And your shoulders might come up a little bit. Just be careful. Don't jack them up too much, right? And soften that. Now pay attention to your pelvis. Push the thighs forward, right? And when you do, notice that you get a little bit of an extra arch in your low back. And release that, right? We're going to do it one more time. We're going to hold it and stay there. So now push your thighs forward. Let that little bit of an arch come into your low back. Pull your frontal hip points. Even though you're pushing your thighs forward, you're going to put a counteraction on that. Gently pull your frontal hip points, just lightly, gently up towards your shoulders. And hopefully maybe you start to feel a little action in your abdomen. And you're also stretching your diaphragm right now, which is pretty cool. You might not feel that one, but we're stretching it just by the nature of this posture. And go ahead and release that and let that go. Let the arms come down. Walk your feet out wide, lean your knees in, and pause. So we'll get into some strength in a little bit. So any of my friends eager for that stronger stuff, hold your horses, buckos. I really want you to understand the pelvis before we go into it, yeah? Walk your feet back into hip distance. Put the heel of the hands back where they just were moments ago. So now it's different. I don't want your pelvis to move. You're going to keep the natural curve of your low back to the best of your ability as you, this is going to happen simultaneously, by the way. You're going to push the thighs forward, but the thighs are going to pull back into the hands at the same time. So make sure both of those happen at the same time. So push, pull, right? And when you push, pull, thighs moving back into the hands moving forward into the thighs, we probably start to feel that corset engage on a deep level, right? But hopefully without our pelvis moving into that arch or flattening for that matter. So our pelvis is neutral, our low back is neutral, and release that, let that go. Adding another level, bring that block. I would like the length of the block on the shortest to be between the thighs. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, we worked with that last week, that block in that setting. So now move gently into the block. So hopefully it runs almost the whole length of your thighs, and your hips, knees are about hip distance. So gently move in. And we've been talking about how you start to engage the magnus adductor, which is the largest of the inner groin muscles. So you're probably feeling that gently moving into the block. By the way, that is where your mula bandha starts, right? The pelvic floor, I could say in layman's terms, or the root lock is the translation. So now put your hands on your thighs again, keep moving into the block, but now to do the push-pull action, thighs back into the hands forward into the thighs. And hopefully your low ribs didn't pop up when you did that. Hopefully your low back didn't pop up when you did that, nor did your low back flatten. So we have a neutral spine, a neutral pelvis. We are pushing gently into the blocks. We are push-pulling the legs and hands into one another. Keep the action of the push-pull, but bring your arms down by your side, palms down. Go ahead and nice and slow with all of that still engaged. Bring your legs up into tabletop. It never felt so hard to move your legs into tabletop, did it? Holy crap. Keep moving into the block. Imagine your hands on your thighs. Do the push-pull, right? And now from there, go ahead and we're going to move the legs a little, tee your arms out. Sorry, palms can be up or down. Move to the right just a little bit. So that was just for the lift, the arms by the side. And come back to center. Keep moving into the block, keep all that push-pull action, move over to the left a couple inches. You don't have to go very far for this. And come back to center. And over to the right. Inhale back to center, get nowhere near the floor. If you're almost at the ground, I'm curious if you're doing all of the cues I asked, right, for. And I don't mean that meanly. I mean that just honestly, right? In order to keep all of those engagement, one more, legs to the right. You really can't go very far with it if you want to keep all of those muscles engaged. Most of us can't. There are, of course, some human bodies that can do that crap. They're not us. Go ahead and put your feet down on the ground. Remove the block, put the block to the side of the mat. Keep your arms teed out, palms up if they were down. Walk your feet the width of the mat. Let your knees move through windshield wiper. You're pacing, you're timing. But now the sacrum gets to be super, super free, right? We asked it to be incredibly stable. And now we're asking it to soften and release. And then come back up to center when you feel complete. We're going to do that internal rotation bit we've been working with. And my knees are facing you in case it's not making sense. So I let my right knee fall over past the midline, right? I'm trying to keep my right hip heavy. My right hip is lifting a little bit, but I'm intentionally trying to keep it pretty steady, right? Without being rigid. Don't engage a bunch of muscles or we miss some of the internal rotation. Now, some of us, this feels like plenty. Keep the foot flexed for knee protection, all of us. Maybe right foot walks out a little wider than the mat, whatever that is for you. I can't tell you. And then release the leg again, soften in, and chances are great, your femur bone, that's the main thigh bone of the right leg, the only thigh bone, just softened in a little further to internal rotation. So Kristen, specifically, but anybody else who feels like they get tightness around their pelvis, especially by the buttocks or the piriformis, the main external hip rotator, I think this stuff is gold. If it doesn't go into your knee, if it goes into your knee, it's not worth it. Lift that knee up. Yep, I'm hanging you there for just a hot second, right? Now go ahead and you're going to let that left knee fall across the midline. My right leg maintains its stability. My left hip stays pretty heavy, and just stay right there. You don't have to rush the foot out. Give your body time to digest this, right? Soften all the muscles, let go of protectionism, and maybe that foot, that left foot, moves over to the left any mount, whatever's right for you, and then again, soften into this again. Your left femur bone, the thigh bone, just went into what's called internal rotation. And I don't know if you can sense this in your body, but your left SI joint, the muscles around the sciatica, the low back, all of that just expanded and opened up. Yeah? Let that knee move back up, walk your feet in, lean your knees into each other, soften the hips entirely, the lower body entirely. Let's say hi to the upper body for just a second, and then we'll add another piece of strength in, please. So the low body is just exactly where it is. We're going to take our arms down by our side and start with just a nice, easy move. Inhale the right arm up overhead and rock your head to the left. Remember, whenever I say rock, what I mean by that is you're not lifting the weight of the skull. So head comes back to center as your right arm comes down. And then as the left arm goes overhead, you'll let your head turn to the right. Yeah. Again, rock, not just turning. And that's the pattern. So go ahead and do maybe another one of those or so. And again, if you've already done 3 sets, are you really being all that mindful? A, is that better for your body to do more reps? B, right? And are you able to feel what's going on? C. When you're finished with that last one, whenever that is for you, go ahead and walk your feet back into hip distance. Bring that block in on the lowest setting, close to the pubic bone, right? So I really spread my legs wide to get it on in there. Be intimate with the block right now. Most action I've gotten in a while, friends, which is totally a lie. I've got a vibrator. Woo! So from there, go ahead and move into the block, right? Feel that action. And then your arms are by your side, pushing down through all 3 corners of the feet. That's the past 2 weeks work. We're going to roll up. Yeah, into bridge. Sorry, didn't tell you where. And then roll back down. One more time like that. We're going to switch it in a second, just so you know. So I'm rolling up. I'm articulating each spine, which is harder to do with that block between the legs. Do you feel that? It's harder to articulate the low back when we are squeezing into that block. Yeah? Okay, so now pause. You can release the pressure on the block, but leave the block where it is, please. We're coming back to it in a hot second. Okie dokie. So now when you lift up, I want you to just simply lift the hips without rolling the spine. So it's almost like the majority of the spine comes up and it maintains its neutrality, I'm going to call it. Hopefully that makes sense. So push down through all 3 corners of both feet, move into the block. Imagine your hands on your thighs or even put them there. Do your push-pull action. Keep everything as neutral as you can on the spine. Push into the feet and lift everything at once into a bridge. It's not going to be your highest bridge, by the way. Exhale, lower down one piece, like your spine is one pipe, if that makes sense. And obviously, I'm not going into my upper back with this work. Inhale and lift the hips. So it's a little more core heavy. And exhale, coming down. You do that one more time. Inhale, come up. This time, stay up, please. Don't let that block roll up to the sky. Try to roll the block down to the ground. And notice how your low back expands, your sacrum expands. See if you can feel that. And lower down, one big clunk. Remove the block, put it off to the side. If you want a windshield wiper or another twist, take a moment and just let that sacrum be footloose and fancy free after asking it to stabilize like it did. So I see someone hugging their knees into their chest and rocking, some people doing windshield wiper, whatever works for you. It's all just grand. Whatever feels like it's going to help you loosen up whatever we just held. Okie dokie artichokes, walk your feet in. Bring the knees into the chest, grab behind the thighs. We're going to try to roll up to a balanced boat if we can. If your feet come down or it takes 3 rocks, who gives a crap, honestly, right? With an inhale, I lift my hips a little bit. I kick my feet behind my head, and then I exhale, and I try to roll up into boat, right? And if you need to be lower or knees more bent or whatever that is so awesome. Move into that imaginary block between your thighs. Right? See if you can't have your feet widen to hip distance, your knees widen to hip distance. So we're working with that hip distance business. Imagine your hands on your thighs and that push-pull action, right? So I'm neither in an anterior tilt, nor am I, which is the tendency here, in a posterior tilt. This is what most of us will go to if we have our druthers, right? Heels could stay on the earth the whole time, by the way. Go ahead and put your right shin in front of your left. Support or extend if you need to. Take a breath. We won't be here for long, but I think most people have the capacity to do cross-legged. And then go ahead, and when you come forward, right, don't leave your pelvis behind you, or all you're doing is just shooting your discs out of your back. That's a little dramatic, but it's not great to do it multiple times, right? Pelvis, 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 pelvis. My pelvis is like, yeah, that's all I got, sister. My hip is like, ooh, ooh, right? And I soften down into that. And so my spine does end up in a little bit of a rounded position. It's true, right? But I'm moving my pelvis in to get the muscle of the lower body first, and then it's a softer rounding. Does that make sense? Inhaling, walking over to the right, stretch that left arm forward and away. And of course, the more dramatic usually is when we walk over to the left and we reach the right arm forward and away. That usually gets into that right hip real good. So go ahead and walk to the other side. I might not have said that well. When you look out and people aren't doing what you say, you didn't say it well. Come back to center and inhale, come back up. Grab your block. It's block day. Put your block in, right? No worries. Good morning. And have those feet out in front of you. Bring your hands back for the start of this one this time. I'm going to try to turn my fingers towards my hips if it's available, but if not, they could turn out. That's okay, right? Push down through all three corners of both feet. You might even pull your toe pedals up to make sure that's happening, right? And then I'm going to push into my fingers, bring the toes down. I'm going to push into my fingers and I'm going to try to lengthen my chest, right? Now imagine your hands on your thighs. Do the push-pull to find your corset. That's the deepest layer of the abdominals that you have, every human, right? And then from there, you're going to try to keep all of that as you bring your right arm forward and then your left arm forward. And you might just stay right here. This might be intense enough for you, right? You don't have to go anywhere else. When you come back, if you decide to balance, notice your back probably wants to do this like crazy. Try to prevent it I come onto my tippy toes first. It gives me a little bit of that a transition time, right? And then I'm going to come up. Everything is hip distance. My heels, my knees, my hips, and I'm getting pretty dang shaky. Move into that block, right? Move, push, pull as if your hands were on your thighs. And now try to make both hands go over to the right and twist the upper torso. Keep a little bit of curve in the low back. Don't lose that. Come back to center, move over to the left. Your feet can totally be on the earth. That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Come back to center. You're not a bad person. Go ahead and come on up. Whew, get rid of that block. Good morning. Good morning. Oh, and Sherry just said, we were supposed to breathe. Downward facing dog, friends. You don't have to. It is recommended. Yeah. And when you come into it, friends, I mean, I always teach this, but I think, again, we just kind of get into it and we're like, I'm going to the final place. There is no final place, by the way. But bend the knees, right? And with the knees bent, push the hands forward and down. I didn't do the left side buttock stretch. Friends, I'm so sorry. Come forward with the feet, sit down. We got to even Steven our bodies out. I am so sorry, friends. Left shins in front, supporting what you need to support. Get really tall. I just felt it in my body is why I realized it. I'm like, why is my left side? Oh, so again, please, when you move forward, I think chins and shoulders want to do our forward folds for us all the time. Pelvis, 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 right? And then soften it, right? So hands can come forward to support you whenever you're ready. They could have been there the whole time, but find that folding in. Now I have a body type where my buttocks just start to lift up and come with me. And I find I get a little more stability and benefit when I keep my buttocks heavy. And to do that, I tone my low belly in. That may or may not be a helpful tool. I can't tell you for sure. Walk over to the left and reach that right arm forward and away. And again, still a nice stretch by all means, but the more dramatic and the one most of us really like is when we now walk over to your right. Reach that left arm forward away, and then, oh, that left buttocks, plus the left side waist, plus, right? And yeah, Kristen, this is going to be the most dramatic for you all the way around. Come back to center, come back up. Now come into downward facing dog. Just want to point out when you're in downward dog, your legs are doing what we just did moments ago, right? Because I'm asking you to bend the knees. So
Bend the knees. Push those hands forward and away. Move those hips up and back. Imagine the block between your thighs. Gently push into it. And then imagine your hands on your thighs and you doing that push-pull action. See if you can engage the corset a touch more. And now maybe the heels start to reach down a little bit. I never love to say just straighten the legs because people just whoop their knees back and lose form, right? Keep the low back, keep the pelvis, keep the kidneys wide. So don't try to get the heels down and be like, I gotta have straight legs. That's the ultimate downward dog. Bullshit. It is not, right? The ultimate downward dog in my world, in my school, is to have the longest spine, the stable spine. And then you straighten the legs from that place. They don't ever have to be all the way straight, ever, ever. Inhale the right leg into the air behind you. Bring the left leg forward between, right leg forward between the hands. That'd be interesting. How would you bring the left leg forward? We're gonna bring that knee down. Feel free to support it. And if your knee is like, no way, Jose, leave it lifted. It's just a little more work, right? And then just moving a couple times on the breath, I'm going to bring in blocks for a little support. I'm going to move my hips a little forward, right? Feel that left psoas say, good morning. And then I'm going to move my hips back. I personally find a little more when I flex my right foot. Again, I can't tell you where your piece is, right? And moving forward, we'll do this 3 times total. And again, this is one of the times when you can let the hips hang a little bit, right? And moving back. And coming forward. And one more time, moving back. Now let's move back and stay here for a second. I'm going to use the blocks or come on to fingertips, lengthen the spine. And you feel how your pelvis moving into a posterior tilt, right? If I pull that pelvis into neutral and I keep that right foot flexed, anyone feeling their hamstrings a little more intensely? And are you breathing? Just checking. Just checking. Come forward. Now this time, instead of letting the hips move all the way in, I want you to do a traction action. What do I mean by that? If your right foot moves back and your left knee pulls forward, they don't actually really move. It's an energetic, right? And then does everyone feel how the pelvic floor starts to turn on? Yeah. Now keep that, please. And inhale, come up into your low lunge. Hands could totally stay on blocks. And as you pull those frontal hip points up, right? We start to move into that neutral spine. I'm going to bring in this idea of the pelvis being a wheel, the pelvic wheel. If I were to turn my pelvic wheel this way, it would start to really stretch the left psoas, right? Right hand, right thigh, leaning over to the right. Keep that pelvis, yeah? And then coming back to center, we're going to move into twist. The left hand comes down on the block, lengthen the spine, and exhale, rotate in. And maybe that right arm is going to reach up. Maybe not. And then move that arm into cactus arm today. We already did this earlier. And see if that elbow can move back without flattening your or collapsing in on your kidneys, right? Or letting your belly just flare. And come all the way down, nice and gentle. Step back for a downward dog in between sides. And just notice if the body A feels differently in this downward dog, B, if one side of the body feels differently than the other. Right? We did right hamstring stretch. We did left psoas stretch. And of course the twist, but those two make my legs very different right now. Inhale the left leg up into the air behind you and step the left leg forward between the hands. Bring the right knee down or not. You could leave it lifted. It's just more work. I'm going to bring my blocks in because I just love working on blocks. So I'm going to let my hips move forward on an inhale and I'm going to let them kind of hang or sag, right? And then as I move back, I might start to flex that left foot. And moving forward on your inhale. So we're just moving back and forth a couple of times just to say, hey, exhale back before we work. So there's dynamic. We're moving dynamically, right? And then there's static. And we'll be static with these poses in just a moment. Here comes the first one. So come back, right? Before you go too far into it, maybe bring those blocks in or come onto fingertips, right? Lengthen the spine. And again, what I'm really asking the most with that is I'm asking for your pelvis to come out of a posterior tilt into a neutral spine. Once it's neutral, flex that left foot. Maybe you fold in a little bit more, but chances are you don't have to. When we move our pelvis to neutral, Whew, high left hamstrings. Do you know that they attach on your ischial tuberosity, your buttocks bone? So if you don't move your pelvis, how do they ever lengthen? They don't. And come forward. And then from there, right, before we come up into it, we're tractioning our left heel back and our right knee forward. We're trying to feel that energy pull up into our pelvic floor and then maintaining that, bring it up into your low lunge, Anjaneyasana. And again, I'm bringing in that idea of the pelvic wheel. If I rotate my wheel in this direction, right? A, I bring myself into a stable, neutral pelvis. B, whoo, hey, right, so as how you doing, right? Left hand down, leaning to the left if that is okay in your body. If balance is an issue, you could have a block outside your left hip, of course, on high. Coming back up to neutral with the spine, we move into that twist. Right hand can be on block or the ground, either way. Inhale, get really long. Exhale, move into the twist. And then maybe that left arm comes up, right? And we're going to add that goalpost thing in just a second there, but you can pause here in what you're familiar with, right? We do this one a lot. Now bend that left elbow into goalpost if it's okay in your upper body. Keep the low back neutral, keep your kidneys neutral, move the left elbow back a little bit if it's available, don't hurt yourself for it. And re-extending, bringing the hand down one more time with Adho Mukha Svanasana, super fancy way to say downward facing dog. I think most all you all know this, but whenever we see the names of our poses and our asanas, right, it is Sanskrit, ancient Indian language that yoga, the original yoga texts were written in. So what's happening with your pelvis and your low back right now? Some of us, we want to move into an anterior tilt and we just bow our spine like crazy because we want sensation. Can you come out of sensation and let it be a neutral spine, a neutral pelvis, right? And some of us, we have a really hard time letting that pelvis move into place. It's rounding up towards the sky, right? So we bend our knees a little bit more and we try to bring it in and bring that pelvic wheel into play. Walk your hands back to your feet. You're going to end up at the back of your mat, hopefully. Hands on shins, reach that chest forward, come halfway up. Exhale, fold in. Grab that blanket and put it off to the side. If you were working with one, then it's just off. And inhale, come all the way up. And exhale, bring those arms down and pause. We have one more series, right? So it's a little workshopy just in the sense that we're bringing props in and really breaking things down. But again, I really like to go over foundations that we use every single time we do a yoga class in at the beginning of the year. And I have so many people who have sciatica, SI joint issues, low back compression, right? Sensitive low back and various things. And this is the gold for that. So grab onto your block and bring it in. Come to the top of your mat. Sorry, then you don't have to walk with it in between your legs. So lean over. The other pattern that a lot of us do, right, when we have that pattern is we move into an anterior tilt when we're standing particularly, and we let our thighs kind of move forward and we compress in, right? So this is going to bring us into awareness about whether or not we compress. So bring your fingertips onto the block. You're going to have to lean over a little bit. That's okay, right? Or you could bend your knees and straighten the spine. Either one works. But I want you to move the block, push the block back, and don't be aggressive with that. Just a light push on the block so you feel your inner groin rotate back. Do you feel how that opens up this space for you when you do that? Right? So now let it go, stand up nice and tall. Imagine that your fingers are still on the block and push the block back. AKA now I'm asking your legs to do the work of what we just did with our hands. And now keep that. And can you then find the pelvic floor as the next layer, or not the pelvic floor, the pelvic wheel. So again, it moves in this direction. My frontal hip points pull up, my buttocks flesh move down. That's why you hear yoga teachers say that all the time, right? That's the pelvic wheel. Now from there, inhale, reach those arms out and up. And exhale, don't let the hips move back as you fold in. That was the last 2 weeks of work, but moving into that block, oh boy, hands on the shins. Inhale, reach the chest forward. If you are in the pattern of your inner groin rolling forward, this is like, whoa. Exhale, fold in. Coming up, move into that block lightly. Inhale the arms out. Don't let the hips move back. and engage the inner groin at the same time, not just the outer groin. Exhale, bring those arms down. So we got one more funky thing, then we'll ditch the block and we'll move with it a little bit, right? Imagine the block being pushed back. Find your pelvic wheel. Inhale, reach the arms up. Keep moving into the block. It's going to be a little weird. Exhale, don't let the hips move back. Tone the abdomen. Inhale, chest forward. Don't crush those kidneys. Bend the knees, plant the hands. And now this is the awkward part. Step back, little baby steps at a time until you get to your downward facing dog. AKA, I want the block to stay in, right? Now from there, bend the knees a little bit. Move into the block. You actually have it there. Try to make the block move back behind you. Don't be extreme with that. And then from there, maybe you straighten the legs a little bit, maybe not. Now we're moving forward into a plank. So for some of you, you probably got to move your feet back. When you inhale forward to the plank, you want your shoulders over your wrists. So move your feet back if you need to accommodate. And exhale back, downward dog. Move from the inner groin. Inner groin moves the block back to move you back today. And inhale, keep moving that block up to the sky as you come forward into your plank. You feel how much they probably want to move forward and the block wants to go down to the ground. Exhale, the inner groin, move the block up to the sky to move you back. We're going to come down onto the earth, just so you know. Inhale forward. Again, keep that block moving up to the sky. Bring your knees down today. Do the push-pull action on the thighs as if your hands were there. Move into the blocks. That was all that stabilization we did earlier today, right? Bend the elbows and try to lower yourself down. Oh! And you might plop, and that's okay. Uncurl the toes. It's a different way of working. Push into the tops of the feet. The thighs get buoyant, and that block is probably on the ground. That is okay, as long as you still have it between your thighs. Move into the block. See if you can get the inner groin to lift the block up to the ceiling. Ha, 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 hardy, har, har, right? Tone your belly and inhale into low cobra. Is this not the strangest feeling, low cobra? And if you're like, yeah, it is, it might not, right? But if it is, you probably have that pattern of the inner groin thrusting forward, right? And come on down. Curl your toes under. We're going to come through a half push-up. Move the elbows in, move them back. Tone your abdomen, your low belly, your corset, right? And now from there, straighten the arms, but imagine me grabbing the inner block and pulling that block back to pull you up. And then exhale back, downward facing dog. If you need to bring the knees down to do this, you're welcome to. But if you want to just bring one hand up and get rid of the block, get rid of the block. And either come back in a downward dog or whatever you need to do. We meet there without the block between our thighs in downward dog. But you probably have an impression, I call it, or an imprint of what the block, the block, right? So imagine the block still there. Move into it lightly till you feel that magnus adductor, that inner groin, the biggest muscle of the inner groin, turn on. Move the block back to the wall behind you, AKA let your inner groin participate. Now inhale the right leg up. And if you do that, your hip should not lift, hopefully. Your toes stay pointing down. Exhale that right foot forward between the hands. Shorten the stance a little bit and bring your left heel down to the ground, pyramid pose. I'm going to bring my blocks in, right? And they can be on high, by the way, right? Whatever you need. And then I'm going to bring my right thumb into my hip crease. I'm going to move my right hip in and back so that I'm neutral in my pelvis. In one plane anyway. But now, can you lengthen your spine, AKA can you let your spine start to move towards neutral away from that posterior tilt, right? So I lengthen my spine to do that. Now push your left heel down. And already your right hamstring might be like, yowza, right? You can bend the right knee a little if you need to, work it towards straight if you can. You might fold over that right leg a little bit more. But again, I don't just thrust my shoulders and my chin at it. My pelvis, my pelvis, my pelvis, my pelvis, my pelvis, and the forward fold. I feel like it's that question. Oh, my Lanta, oh, my pelvis. Inhale, reach the chest forward, bend the knees, move the blocks, step back to downward dog to do our switch out. So I need to lengthen my downward dog a little bit because I shortened my stance for pyramid. And again, if I maintain the integrity of my sacrum and my low back, when I lift that left leg, my toes are pointing down, my inner groin is already working, etc. So find everything we've done in class without me saying everything. Inhale the left leg up, toes pointing down, inner groin's participating. That part I will say. And go ahead and bring that forward between the hands. Again, I'm going to shorten my stance a little bit so I can get my right heel down. That's the only way I can do this personally. And then that left hand, the thumb is going to come in the hip crease, move that left hip back, lengthen the spine forward, right heel down, right? And then notice where your pelvis is in space. For most of us, it'll want to jerk up to the sky, right? So we try to bring that pelvis into neutral or move towards what would be an anterior tilt, AKA cow. Maybe you fold over and soften in, and then yes, your spine does get around a little bit at that last piece. Yeah. Anyone not feeling their left hamstrings and or their right calf? Come on up a little bit. Oh, so sweetly. She feels it so sweetly. You can move those blocks. It's the last downward dog of class, friends. Go ahead and step back. And then we're basically moving down towards our backs in a hot second here. I worked us right up to the button. But just notice this downward dog. And if it feels differently, if you have any more information that's helpful and beneficial to your body, bring those knees down wide, big toes touch, child's pose. Of course, if there's another pose that feels softer to you, you should do that. Let the low back round, let the pelvis let go. Might even feel nice to rock the pelvis a little bit right to left. Walk your hands back towards your knees. You can cross your ankles and bring the legs forward, or you can bring your knees together and swoosh them around. But you're just going to switch out to come onto your back. Imagine the block between your thighs. Try to find all the work that we brought in today, plus the ball mound of the big toes from the past 2 weeks as you lower yourself down onto your back. I'm going to suggest windshield wiper as your pose before Shavasana. But again, if you know you'd rather have your knees up higher and do that twist or whatever feels like it's going to be the most releasing of the body at this point, so you can lie in stillness for a few moments. Do that one. Head can move, it doesn't have to, all the usual suspects, yeah. And when you feel complete, walk the feet in. I said one more, but I want to do one more quick. Right ankle, left knee. We won't be here long. Bring the legs in, interlace behind the thigh, or leave the left foot on the ground, of course. Let that right thigh gently move away from the right shoulder. And hopefully that right buttock says, oh, thank you. Let's bring that left foot down and switch the legs out. When you bring those legs in, you can do that push-pull on the thigh and then gently hug in. Left thigh gently moving away from the shoulder. Okay, now we're ready. Start to release your body out into your version of final resting pose. That could be corpse pose, could be constructive rest pose, could be butterfly, etc. Double check the whole body. We all, often do here at the end to make sure it's not grabbing on, but I would ask for a little extra special attention and awareness in the muscles of the pelvic area, the abdominal area, and the low back area. Really, really try to soften those just as much as you possibly can. They worked a lot today. As if you've never taken a Shavasana.
Anyone at home or watching the video, you're welcome to stay here for a few more minutes. Otherwise, bring your awareness into your breath. And come back into this body in the freshest, newest way that you can and explore little movements. And of course, they can get a little bit bigger, or you can move into a stretch or any such thing. And trying to come up with as much softness as you can. Start to make your way to an upright posture. And now that we're here in this final posture, right, whether you're kneeling or cross-legged or what have you, again, just bring a little awareness to your pelvis. When we are seated, the majority of human bodies, that pelvis wants to roll behind us into a posterior tilt. It's not wrong. It's one of the ways the spine was built to move. But if we spend all of our time there, sleeping on our side, sitting in chairs, etc., it can be a lot for the body to take that one position all the time, right? So what happens if you move out of the middle of the buttocks bones, aka pull that in or turn on your pelvic wheel? Bring your hands together in front of your heart. Inhale. Gently bowing that head into that heart. Just always remembering that the two are very intertwined. And always seeking guidance from both. Yeah? Namaste. Hmm. And again, I would just invite you, I'll say it one more time as you walk out the door, just notice how you perceive things and how if we switch our perception, it can switch the entire physiology of our body. If something happens, you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. What happens if you pause and reframe it, take a couple of deep breaths, right? I don't know, something to play with. I'll give one teaching story that I love. There's a gentleman, he's in his suit, right? He's got his briefcase, he's running late for a meeting. He gets outside of his office building. The cab's not there, it's raining, and he's pissed because he forgot his umbrella and his raincoat, and he hates the rain, and he's just like on his way to his meeting, and that's where he is, and the whole thing that's happening inside his body to accommodate that, right? Same exact scenario. Man in a suit with a suitcase, doesn't have an umbrella, walks out into the rain. There's no cab waiting for him. And he just looks up and he's like, oh my gosh, it's raining. And the physical sensations that go through his body, right? So this has so much to do with our physiology.